It's 9:41. I've had two trades with VORB, the same setup, but I did get out the first time because I wasn't liking the price action. This thing is down a lot. They're going to fail. I think they had some really bad news that they're going to end operations or something like that. And, that's just not good for any company. So it's been selling off, and I do like it because I was trying to be in for something where it, in this case, had a really bad gap down, and then it could be something where it just finds a bottom somewhere, ideally at the market open. A lot of OTCs do that. They have a really big gap down, and they just immediately start turning around. So I was interested in it for that reason. I did buy the first time at 933, which was at 20 right here. Once it was out of the teens and it looked like it was going to break above 20 for the first time. And then I was in it right, but then it was looking all ugly. It wasn't really working. It wasn't uptrending, and I did sell for roughly the same price. I somehow lost 7 pennies, so I'm gonna guess it was a tiny difference. But it was essentially for the most part the same price point, 20 cents. And then I did get in it again once it was finally breaking above this top right here, which is 25 and not 25, but you know what I mean, like a 20 and then a 5 afterwards, so 20 and a half. Unfortunately, I didn't get the best entry. I would have been happier if I got in maybe at like 20 and then that 6 right there instead of this point, which was almost 21 at 937 once it actually broke out of it. And then what I did was just sell in pieces on the way up. It did get as high as 22, but I was worried that it would maybe do something like this where it just immediately turns around and looks super ugly. And there were always big sellers at the ask, not as big as this one, but there were always like 20, 30, 40,000 share sellers. So I kind of made it a bit iffy, and I was selling into the uptrend. I first sold 100 at 21.1, so that was at this point right here. I sold some here, and then 21.28, so that was roughly right here at 939, and then 21.77 was where I sold some more, so that was right here because it was looking exponential, and that's in my mind I had like a trend line drawn and it was just like breaking the upper part of it, which meant that I should definitely sell. This is gained a little too much on the upside. And then I sold some. This was my best sell at 22.25, and that was at 940. This candle right here. 22.25 was around right here. This was my best sell, just 50 shares. And then I did sell the remaining amount, 200 at 21.9 when it was looking a bit iffy, very sketchy. And I'm very lucky because maybe like a few seconds later I would have maybe have had a sell in the lows right here in this candle where it just blew up. So that was essentially the trade there. I didn't make very much. I'm gonna guess I didn't have the right amount of shares because when I first calculated how many shares I should have, that was way back here. And I thought worst case scenario breaks the bottom and then I'm selling maybe at 16, which might have been too massive, but it did have some wicks here, even though this was pre-market price action. Maybe a more realistic worst case scenario would have been that it broke here at 19 and then maybe I'm selling at 17 and a half perhaps. That would have been more realistic, but you can see this thing had a top at 22 and a bottom at 20. So I guess, yeah, maybe worst case scenario would have been a sell at 17, but definitely not 16. So I'm gonna guess I didn't have the right amount of shares to have, made more trading a $20 risk level, but it is not really interesting right now. But I guess I might maybe downtrend hold VWAP and then it could try to turn around. But it is a dead stock. I'm just trading it for any potential bounces. This one would have been nice if it broke the previous day high right here, but not pre-market. This one's interesting. It looks a bit like a, it looked a bit like a bull flag here, but looking at this chart, not so much. I'll make an update later. I'm gonna keep looking at VORB, but I don't see anything that I want to trade right now. It is 10:34 p.m. and I'm here to call it off. Overall, it's going to be a tiny scratch day. I'm up just $1.81. 3 trades, 2 with VORB, roughly the same setup. And then I did trade YMAB later. This one did work out later, and there was also this setup with which one was it? I think it was SCYX. No, it wasn't this one. One of these had a very nice reversal setup, and it worked out super nicely. This one right here, I never took this one. It was just a bit too weird the way it traded, but it did work. This one was a super nice setup, and I was interested in it because it was selling off, and you can draw like a trend line. It did eventually break this downtrending trend line, and it continued to bounce, and I do like it, but it was just a bit weird. I wanted it to be like an inverse head and shoulders, and then when it was starting to work, it was a bit too just strange the way it traded. You can see the shoulder, the head, and then the shoulder here for the most part. And there was a point where I actually could have been in when it sold off here and it caught itself. Again, trading around the very round number of $4, and I could have been in maybe at 3.95, and then it was starting to kind of uptrend right here, and I was interested in it, maybe doing like a tiny dip, not lower than this level, and then I would be interested, but it never did that. It just kind of creepily uptrended until 450, and it did eventually make a move and even break above VWAP. So this one was pretty impressive, and let me go over the setup I did trade later, which was YMAB. This was a bull flag setup. You can see the uptrend if I zoom out. It kind of does look like a bull flag, and this one ended up working, but not when I was in it. I did trade this at 10.11, and that was at 486. Right here, 10.11 was when I got in at 486, and it was looking like it was trying to do it, especially with this downtrending trend line, but it just started to not really do anything, and that it did break above this 480. What was this, like this 483-ish level? And when it broke above it, it was nice, and then when it kind of came back a little, I got in it, but it didn't just continuously uptrend. It didn't like break above the bull flag setup, hold above VWAP, and then continue the uptrend. My risk level was VWAP. It did break it here, but it did eventually make a nice uptrend. Not really like a crazy exponential bull flag that I would want it to do. This was like a gradual uptrend. And I did get out of this one the same minute because I just wasn't liking the price action. I thought it was something where it breaks and uptrends, comes back, and then I'm in it, and then it just caught itself a little, and then it really works out. But it didn't do that. This thing just took a longer period of time, but it did get as high as 598. So let's just see what that would have been. Wow, that would have been a 22% move. It just didn't work out when I was in it. It did downtrend some more and break under VWAP before this bull flag played out. And I guess because it was a longer bull flag, it worked out over a longer period of time as well. That's pretty much it. I think a few good learning lessons right here. And VORB did play out. Actually, a bigger move right here, but this wasn't anything that I was really aiming for. I just wanted a nice quick reversal in the morning towards the upside. I did do this later, but this wasn't necessarily something I would have traded unless I was going to maybe be risky and try breaking, try taking a setup after this 21 break, but that would have been about it, just with hindsight in theory. That's it for today. 3 trades, a few lessons. That's all I got.